Behind every silence, there is a story of survival waiting to be told. Stories hidden in plain sight. Truth buried beneath fear. This is the Maxwell Matewere podcast, unmasking the truth, revealing the crime, and giving a voice to the voiceless. Investigative discussions, insightful, thought-driven. The podcast that reinforces authority and human rights mission. Real stories, real investigations, real impact. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to our second podcast. If you were with us last time, we started this discussion on human trafficking, and we are looking at this book that has opened up a discussion that is relevant, that should give us all sleepless nights. And it's entitled Human Trafficking Exposed, a book by Maxwell Matewere. You can purchase this book, your own copy, and you won't regret it because it is necessary. We all need this education, especially now. And you can purchase this book on Amazon, but also Barnes & Noble. And today we will be continuing this discussion, and I have two guests. But before I introduce them, in our first podcast, the Chief Executive Officer for the Malawi Human Rights Commission, Ms. Habiba Osman, did draw attention and confirm that there are over 400 children that were adopted illegally, and they're missing, no trace, no record in the system. That's how serious human trafficking is. It's an organized crime that should shake us all and lead us to take action, because it involves all of us, even if you haven't been directly impacted. But there must be somebody you know. Even if you don't know them, you should be moved to be alert, to take action, to keep your eyes wide open, because it could happen to anybody. Today I'm joined by Pastor Charles Thangalimodzi. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you.
But I'll also be joined virtually by Priscilla. I'm trying to pronounce the middle name correctly, so do tell me if it's wrong. Priscilla Rosario Garner, is that correct? Brilliant. And Pastor Thangalimodzi is the director of Hope Channel Malawi. And Priscilla is a parent who will share her experience with what she went through. She adopted children, but we'll hear more about that when we roll out on this podcast. This book is a must for your shelves. Difficult read, but very necessary. If you haven't read anything this year, make this a priority. This is the Maxwell Matewere podcast, Real Lives, Real People. I am your host, Heza Chitori. Pastor, speaking of this book, Human Trafficking Exposed, I want to assume that you've read it.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, brilliant.
Don't assume I did. I did.
Okay, so a very insightful book, real experiences, real people. Pastor, what is the most important message that you took away from this book?
The most important message that I took from the book is the awareness.
Right.
In the sense that there even me, I was shocked to hear some of the issues. I consider myself a little bit elite from Malawi.
Right.
But when I was reading the book, when I was going through the book, I found some other things that to me, it was a shock. So to me, I'm saying if I would summarize this book or something that I picked, is the need for more awareness. Yes.
Okay. But chapter 5 of this book is talking about children and how they are recruited into the system of human trafficking. And some of them are not necessarily stolen from their homes.
Yeah.
They are recruited in a manner that seems normal, right under the noses of guardians and parents sometimes, who are none the wiser. But chapter 5 is talking about illegal adoptions through homes that children are placed under the care of people that are looking after them. And it draws attention to the fact that there's children that are exposed to trafficking, children and babies who are exposed to illegal adoptions, which is a form of trafficking, are also exposed to some risks such as loss of legal identity, family ties, their nationality, their inheritance rights, and the possibility of reuniting with their biological families become very, very slim.
Yeah.
And we're also told that many of them are exposed to neglect of their health, so medical attention, exploitation, both physical, mental, emotional, and sometimes even sexual abuse. As a pastor and a leader of a faith-based organization, how does that make you feel? Or what do you think about?
Yeah, well, even the first question is okay. How that makes me feel. But you see, even the way you have explained it, even me before I read the book, there were things I would have done as if I'm doing the right thing.
Right.
Yeah, because the way the book has highlighted other things that even me I've come to realize that things that we've looked at them as normal things or in the name of helping as the church. Because as the church, really, we believe in eradicating poverty, helping the people, even encouraging adoption so that children should not suffer.
Yes.
But there are things that as a church that we often overlook. And that's things that I found in the book. Who do I blame? The church, not really, but I blame ignorance.
Okay.
Yes.
Pastor, you've raised an important point.
Yeah.
As a church, do you think that we are conversing about this very important matter? Are we talking about this? Are we open to this discussion in 2026 where children could be trafficked within the church?
Unfortunately, no. We, as the church, we believe everybody who comes to church is a believer.
Right.
And we believe that everybody who comes to church, even in the name of appeal to take care of the children, is in the good cause. So your question really is to answer it is straightforward. We are not doing. There's nothing that the church is doing. And even in the presence of this book, if it is not made, if the church is not made aware, in this year, 2026, children will still be missing, children will be still being trafficked, because I think the absence of awareness. I've said, is the church wrong? I'm saying not really, but it's the abundance of ignorance.
Right.
That is there in the church. Maybe lack of people who would make the church aware. So there are quite a few maybe who are fighting and knocking the doors of the church to make the church aware of how the world is operating in terms of trafficking.
Right. Priscilla is a mother. She has been described as a heroine, I agree, who instead of choosing to walk away in silence, chose to stand up for the truth and to fight for vulnerable children and parents. She will share her story. Welcome, Priscilla.
I'm deeply honored and clever in fact in receiving such recognition from experts, as it encourages me to continue advocating. However, I don't consider myself a hero by any means. My focus was in the unseen moments of taking simple steps of faith and responsibility in the midst of so much uncertainty to ensure that my three children are protected and loved. They are the true heroes for being resilient survivors, and I'm so blessed to be their mother. And now, seeing how our case was one of the ones that led to further investigations by the Malawi Civil Rights Commission, I never expected to hear that over 400 children and babies remain untraceable through illegal adoption. This is the reason why I chose to stand so strongly for the rights of the most vulnerable, knowing that this issue has affected more than just my family. So I praise God for making the truth known and always hearing the cries of this person. I'm thankful for this opportunity to share what God has done in my life and how His journey our pain into purpose.
So Priscilla, from your explanation, you can confirm that you have adopted children from Malawi, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you talk us through the process of adoption and what you went through to adopt your children from here?
Basically, I adopted the younger two siblings from Malawi and have been fostering her older sister on a student visa after attempting to adopt her as well, but was unable to because of the withholding on that. And so I originally learned about Malawi through one of the newsletters from the children's home operating in Malawi that was sent to our church here in the United States back in 2012. My first mission trip to Malawi in 2016 was not to Black children, but to volunteer my services at orphanage at British Rangers. During the visit, I was invited to witness how children were identified and admitted to the orphanage. I was then taken to a village, Malawi, for the demonstration, only to be welcomed by the shocking living environment of 3 children. The children were living in a damaged house with no roof, no doors, or parental care. The youngest in the structure was 2.5 years old. And just decided that it was such a distressing and emotional experience for me. I then pleaded for their removal from the dangerous environment, and the authority responded favorably. And they completed all the necessary assessments that confirmed that the children were orphans. Shortly after returning home, I was shocked to see pictures of the children on the orphanage Facebook page that was looking for sponsorship and adoption. I then committed and started providing support for my children's care while at the orphanage. I didn't want the children I was supporting to be taken away by an unknown family and risk permanent separation. So I began with the adoption process. Overall, it took 3.5 years to adopt my 2 younger children, and then the adoption was finalized in 2020.
Priscilla, we learned through social media that you later found yourself in a legal conundrum. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so after adoption, I was in disbelief when my younger daughter disclosed to me that her birth mother is not dead, and that the officials from the orphanage and some relatives instructed her not to tell me. My oldest daughter then later confirmed that relatives told her that she and her birth mother would be killed through witchcraft. I was deeply appalled that she had been living in silence and fear for many years. I then took it upon myself to do my own independent investigation and discovered that the documents provided by the orphanage at the time of the adoption were indeed fraudulent, and that the children had living birth parents. I later found out everything that happened during the time I went to the village for demonstration was sleeplessly staged. All of it was arranged as a process of recruiting me through a staged scene to demonstrate a false and sympathetic situation, but then to convince me to continue supporting the orphanage and eventually adopt the children in hopes of recruiting more families through my story. That really worked for them. But in the process, they put me and my family in very serious legal and financial challenges.
Do you know any other families that have experienced or encountered the same?
I'm making some efforts based on a report published by the Human Rights Commission to connect with other families who have also experienced recovering the truth.
So Priscilla, why did you choose to speak up and not just stay silent?
Because of the very serious things I saw and experienced during my own independent investigation, I have responsibility to report them out proper authorities. I couldn't remain silent because I was responsible for what I knew, and I've experienced things that others have never been through. And also by handling the situation through reports due to the legal nature of the matter, this gave me the opportunity to testify as key witness. And using my voice to simply state the truth, I am also able to advocate on behalf of my children and their birth parents for the years of suffering they've endured, and to also ensure the best interests of the children. And of course, considering how I've known most of the children at the orphanage and seen them grow up, it actually makes me wonder how many more are in the same shoes my daughters were in. And once I faced a lot of fear and outrageous backlash in the process, but the silent cries and suffering of other children in similar situations is much louder and more dramatic than all these criticisms against me for speaking up.
Pastor, what do you think after hearing Priscilla's story? And interesting to note that her story starts at church.
Yeah.
The appeal was made at church, the place where we're not conversing about this particular issue. How does that make you feel?
Well, it's abhorring and it's shameful that the whole thing starts with the church. But you know, as I said before, someone with good intentions has been lured into something else that you never imagined. It's something that makes one sad, because you see, as she was explaining, it's unbelievable that, someone who is innocent meets someone or an organized crime whereby everything is made seamless, as if it's just normal. It's normal, and somebody is lured into that. That makes me so sad, and it's shameful, as you said, that from your question, what do you think? How do you feel? It's shameful to admit, but it happened from the church. And this is where I'm saying we need more education in the church, because not many people in the church are aware how organized crime is like. So I pray that the book is maybe trying to expose that. That's why I'm happy for the book. Yeah, so if you ask me, how do I feel? It's not good news. It's not. But we need more awareness in the church.
Pastor, do you think people would lose trust in faith-based groupings because of things like these? Or are losing trust, rather?
I think yes or no. You see, the thing about faith, it's something that is supposed to push you further or get more or believe in God more and more.
Yes.
Now, if the church is being affected in the sense that it's part of, because in this case, it means the church becomes part of organized crime. And yet the church itself is not, the intention of the church is not that. Yes. But because it's been connected to people who have got evil intentions, now even in that way, the church is affected. Many would lose faith, really, because people will not see the difference between the organized crime and the church, because from the organized crime, they know the best ground is the church. So to answer your question in short, yes, the church will be affected.
Pastor, can we conclude from this conversation that Priscilla was a subject or victim of organized crime?
I would pray that she doesn't lose her faith, Priscilla, lose her faith. Because I don't think, even though she heard from the church, but I'm not sure that it was the intention of the church. But I think the church, where maybe she heard this, or from wherever she got this message, it is an organized crime whereby even to trace, even to note some errors, it was quite difficult. So I feel sorry for her that she went through such a hard time, and it is sad. It is sad. That's why I'm saying my only word is I pray that she doesn't lose her faith.
Priscilla, was the matter resolved? Has it been resolved?
Unfortunately, not yet. I'm still working on obtaining legitimate representation through the courts in Malawi and seeking justice. I still have so many questions left unanswered, and I'm curious to know more details, as of course I'm not the only one hearing from the Human Rights Commission.
But as you wait, do you feel that you're getting adequate help towards getting justice, if we could call it that?
It's definitely taking a long time, and much longer than I expected. I feel like at this point we're doing the very best that we can. I know our lawyers are doing the best they can, but I don't really know much of what's happening on the Malawi end.
As the conversation continues, we can see that all of us can be affected globally, locally, from the churches that we attend, from the people that we interact with. It really, truly is a crime that should shame us all. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
Behind every silence, there is a story of survival waiting to be told. Stories hidden in plain sight. Truth buried beneath fear. This is the Maxwell Matewere podcast, Unmasking the Truth, revealing the crime and giving a voice to the voiceless. Investigative discussions, insightful, thought-driven. The podcast that reinforces authority and human rights mission. Real stories, real investigations, real impact. Stay tuned.
Welcome back as we continue this conversation on human trafficking, making reference to this book that was authored by Maxwell Matewere called Human Trafficking Exposed. It talks about techniques, reasons, and some of the most unlikely incidences where people can be trafficked. It's simply something that we should all be educated on because it, like I said before, it affects all of us. Priscilla, you've spoken about the process that you underwent to adopt your children. And clearly it's visible to see that you've been affected by this, but how has this situation specifically affected your family and you personally?
Yeah, this entire experience has been so difficult for us all. It's also been highly traumatic for the kids and I, and we're of course still in the process of healing. Daily, I'm still feeling the heavy weight of emotions from not being able to live freely as it interferes with daily life and decision making. However, on the positive side, I am thankful that we successfully engaged the courts to handle the situation as it is a legal matter. And I do have hope knowing that this is a season that we will eventually get through. And I know that God has been so good to us with every miracle he has performed along the way. I'm also thankful that he is sending the right people to stand by our side and pray for us without judging, even when they don't fully understand the magnitude of what we're dealing with. God knows exactly who they are, and my children are truly grateful to the few individuals who have consistently checked on them, showing compassion and positive motivation, since many of the opportunities for them have been limited. Of course, not by our choice, but because of the legalities that we have no control over. And that's been the most painful part to deal with as a mother. And though it has been a long and painful journey, I don't ever want my children to grow older with identification tied to illegal documents and fraud. They deserve to live freely, knowing that their birth parents have also given consent for their custody.
I will assume that you have read the book, Human Trafficking Exposed.
Yes, and it has been the most moving and eye-opening book I've ever read.
Priscilla, chapter 5 of this book, Human Trafficking Exposed, speaks about the realities and some of the ways in which children, especially babies, are trafficked, linked to orphanages. And it also deals with so many stories that have been used as case studies. In your experience, how big is this problem? What is the scope of this problem?
After learning the truth about my experience and researching more from Maxwell's other case studies, I now see the bigger picture of how subtly the process of international adoption has been taken advantage of, with so many flawed gaps throughout the process. The main issue happening is that the majority of children are being recruited into orphanages and being labeled as orphans to then be exploited for donor support and or adopted by innocent foreign families who are willing to pay thousands for the process. In orphanages with very high number of children, they use the term orphans to appear more vulnerable to unsuspecting donors who have a heart to help. And unfortunately, babies tend to be the most adopted since they don't have any recollection of their past. And so what our family has experienced is clearly not an isolated issue, but rather part of a deeper syndicate that is hidden within systems outwardly approved by governments as an act of goodwill.
Does this chapter provide relevant information on this matter?
Yes, it definitely provides clear evidence from multiple cases, uncovering well orchestrated syndicates that are actively using hundreds of innocent children who cannot speak for themselves.
Priscilla, thank you very much for sharing your story, but also for sharing all of the things that you've shared. It's very clear that this problem is global. It just doesn't affect Malawi. It affects, it's the world over. But we also see from your sharing that there is so much work to be done to be able to raise awareness, to be able to protect children and babies who are the most vulnerable in this case. So thank you for that. Pastor, we were speaking about the church and how there is a gap in information and education on this very important matter of human trafficking, because we're not cordoned off, we're not exempt. Actually, some of the most vulnerable places are the most dangerous, as we're learning here.
Yeah.
So what can we do, and where do we begin to raise this awareness, to educate the members, the congregation, on this very important matter?
But you see, the main problem, those who are operating these syndicates, they want to make money.
Right.
And church is an easy entry because of, we've talked about ignorance. And the church is also connected to innocence. They use innocence. And these syndicates wants to make money. And the most easiest target is the church because of those two things that I've said. Trust. Yes. It's something, because of trust, you don't check a lot of things. And when you combine trust, ignorance of not knowing how these syndicates work, because for them, they just want to make money. It becomes so complicated. It is so complicated, and it's not just something that we can easily understand unless somebody who has gone into it and has an more deep expertise in these syndicates, how they work. It's when the church will be able to know. So first of all, is to allow those who know how these groups operate.
Right.
Allow them to speak in the church. I think that would be the first thing. Because if you ask me as a pastor, I don't know. If I had not read this book,
yes,
how would I warn the church? So if anybody brings a leaflet in the church about adoption, I'll say, wow, this is nice, because I'm not aware of what is going on.
Yes.
So my plea is for the church to be aware, like the one who has written this book. To me, I'm saying the church must allow such people to say more in the church, because they are the ones who have got knowledge on how complicated these groups are like. When we are talking of syndicates, we are not just talking of someone who can come and see what the person is doing. The church will not be aware, and the church would think they are doing a good job because of those ignorance, but at the same time, really, the church wants to help. So once again, I would say those who know how these groups operate are the ones who should come forward, or the church should allow them to speak in the church so that people in the church should be aware.
Pastor, you've raised a very important point, because there's a very thin line between wanting to help, but then you're opening doors to things that you don't know.
Yeah.
So the church is a place of charity, and because we're believers, we're called to charity.
Yes.
And there are people that are in genuine need. But the flip side of the coin is there is a danger, and there are people taking advantage of that. So there's a real discussions that need to be talked about in the church, because there is a danger. Priscilla, we're nearly coming to the end of the discussion, but how has the book impacted you, apart from the fact that we have spoken here about a matter that you are directly linked with, which is the adoption of children and illegal adoptions through orphanages? But obviously this book is talking about human trafficking on a larger scope, not just the adoption of children. We've spoken here, I think, in the first podcast about trafficking of refugees, about the methods that are used, so many different aspects to the syndicate that are a chain that is used to come together and to make the things happen. So how does this book, on a larger scale, but also as a whole, impact you?
Yeah, every chapter left me wanting to continue reading more as I could literally almost visualize each story as they were all written so detailed and insightful. The book has lit a fire in me to continue advocating for greater awareness so that others in the United States and around the world can join the mission to stand for the protection of children suffering in silence and to empower vulnerable communities in breaking the cycle of trafficking through education and prevention.
Pastor, as a leader of a faith-based organization, it's very clear that this is not a very easy topic
Yes.
to speak of,
Sure.
to crack, because it also involves mindset change.
Yes.
We have been wired in a certain way for such a long time. But reading this book, how has this impacted you apart from the topic that is directly linked to what you do, which is the church or faith? But how has the book as a whole impacted you?
Well, the book has really impacted me in many ways, especially, let me speak from the context, because the book has got so many different chapters.
Yes.
When I was going through the book, apart from the context of today of children adoption,
Yes.
there are also other chapters that really have touched my nerve very strongly.
Yes.
Especially, well, let me not say those chapters, maybe there'll be food for some days. But the impact that it has left to me is still to say, let's do more. It has left a gap in me to say, there's much that we don't know that the church needs to know.
So we should be open
Yes.
to having this discussion.
Yes.
And Pastor, knowing what you know now, what would you share with families, people in general, knowing what you know, having read the book especially, and having had this discussion, what would you share with families or individuals that are considering taking this route of adoption, especially through the church?
Yeah, I would say, as Priscilla already said, again, I will repeat her word, say, I think it's better to have a better analysis or go through, or don't rush to adopt until you've gone through, you've verified all the channels, all the processes that one needs to go through. Because, as we said, the way the syndicate deals with the process is so very subtle that it's difficult to detect. So I'm simply appealing to say, if one wants to adopt, they must double check, even though people seems to be more trusted. Even the one who is owning the charity is a pastor like me. But I'm saying double check, because you never know.
You never know.
Yes,
True. Priscilla, as someone who has experienced this firsthand, someone who has been through this, what advice would you give to other families that are considering taking the same route?
There is no doubt that adoption is a beautiful act of love for children in need of a family. Ultimately, every child deserves to be cared for within a loving family, and all needs should be to the best interest of the child. However, for families who are considering international adoption, my advice is to really do your research before signing any contracts or sending any money for the process. It would also be wise to vet reports to see if there have been any cases of child trafficking that have taken place in the country of interest. Instead, I suggest considering adoption through the foster care system and supporting alternative family-based care in countries with a need.
Priscilla, would you recommend this book to other people to read it, and why?
Absolutely. The main questions that one must ask are, what comes to your mind when you see the words human trafficking? Is it truly what you thought when you find out what it really is? For me, after reading Human Trafficking Exposed, I now have a deeper understanding of what human trafficking is and why it is so important to stand against it. I'm truly inspired by the relentless work of the author, who is a recognized U.S. Department of State global hero as a result of the liberation of so many victims. Because of one man's intervention, many lives are now changed with hope. This same hope can also empower ordinary people like me and you to make a difference by sharing the wealth of knowledge explained in this book and applying it when speaking up for those who cannot speak for themselves. And as an adoptive mother and educator, I invite all parents and everyone who works with children to read this book and see the reality of what is really being disguised in plain sight in front of our very eyes. And I particularly invite American churches that have been used for the recruitment of deceived donors to access this book and learn more about human trafficking and how it operates. And reading this book is more than just words on a page. It is a powerful catalyst for change by those who are willing to learn about the truth and to take action for the sake of those who have been suffering long enough. How many more victims will it take before we realize that we can do something about it? One victim is way too many.
Priscilla, thank you very much for sharing your experience. Somebody will learn from this. And also, even if somebody never has to go through it, but being educated can save a life. It could be a neighbor, it could be a friend, but just sharing this opens so many doors to information that wasn't there before. It also opens, possibilities to a conversation that can, like I said, save a life. So thank you very much. Pastor, you spoke earlier about making this book available in churches. As a leader and a pastor of a church, do you feel that genuinely there would be a difference if we had access to information like this?
Genuinely, yes. I feel there would be a difference. Because, as I said already, it is not that the church is doing this deliberately, but it is the absence of information where the church is left, the church has got a gap.
Right.
Now, as I've said already, this gap is not created because the church wants to have the gap, but it's because it is not aware. As I've said, there are few who have taken up step to make the church aware. So I'm saying again to say this book would really help those that are not aware of what is going on from the organized crime, because this is an organized crime. These syndicates are organized, very sophisticated. And as I've said already, it's not easy. So I'm saying yes.
Okay. Priscilla, is there anything that you feel is important to share before we end this conversation that we haven't already touched on?
I'd say the biggest thing is I just hope that more people read this book and read it for themselves to see exactly what human trafficking is about, and using the powerful information that's provided to take action, and realizing that just average people can make a big difference. All it takes is knowing what the signs are, and when you see something, to say something about it and to speak up for those who cannot, and not being afraid to do so.
Priscilla, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being courageous, and I wish you all the best. Pastor, as we end this but as we stop here for now, because I believe that we cannot end this conversation. This is just the beginning. But as we come to a close for now, are there any last words as a leader of a faith-based organization that you feel you should touch on?
Sure. My last words would be, first of all, anyway, I should say thank you for inviting me to be part of this and to make the awareness. And my last words, again, will be the very same words, an appeal to say, whoever has an access to the book, let him read the book first.
Right.
Because as I'm saying, appealing to the churches that people should be aware, maybe my words will not make sense more than what the book is saying. Right. So my last word would be everyone who is hearing at least try to find the book. Until you read the book and say it is nonsense, that's okay. But to me, my last word would be go and read the book and then make your mind from there.
Pastor, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I think the one thing that has come out of this conversation is that the lack of education, the lack of awareness, the lack of information could be the very thing that opens doors to such a dangerous activity such as human trafficking. How safe are our safe spaces? These are questions we should be asking ourselves, because it's not just locally. It is a global syndicate that is affecting lives all over the world. So how safe are the safe spaces? Are we educated enough? Are we open to the conversation? Because for all we know, we could actually save a life. So today we have been reminded that education is one of the tools that can disrupt silence. If we're educated, we'll be able to speak up. It gives us a voice, and that's what we need in this fight against human trafficking. And today I was joined by Priscilla Garner, who is a parent, but also a hero, even though she says she should not be classed as that. But I agree with Maxwell that she is a hero. She chose to speak up. But also I was joined by Pastor Charles Thangalimodzi. I thank you both for your time. And watching at home, I hope this moves something in you to be a little more vigilant, to be part of this conversation, and further still, to be part of the fight against human trafficking. Here's Ochitulu. Thank you.
In a world of chaos, where everything's insane, there's a glimmer of hope that still remains. Through the eyes of a child, we can find our way to a brighter future, a brand new day. With the red cord outreach, we're reaching out, bringing love and support, there's no doubt. Empowerment, resources, and a helping hand, together we can make